Welcome back to another episode of Focus on EDU, EdTech, and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko from CDW Education. Really excited to have another episode here today. Another esports and education flavored episode. We have got Sergio Brack, the Director of Esports from University of Maryland. Really excited to bring Sergio in here. So, Sergio, do us a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in education and esports.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Sergio Brack. I did my undergrad at the University of Mississippi, or Ole Miss, and helped founded the student-led club there that ultimately led to where they are today. During my time in my undergrad, I also helped found College COD, which is the premier Call of Duty league for collegiate esports at the moment, recently acquired by eFuse. And then from there, I started directing esports programs, went to Ottawa University in Ottawa, Kansas, and won some championships there. But really missed the bigger school feel and really wanted to impact even more students. So here I am at the University of Maryland.
So, what are some things, you've been part of programs in a few different roles. What are some things that you've learned from past roles that you're hoping to bring to the experience at UMD?
Yeah, I think I got a good mix of both, right? Being at a smaller school and really just getting the whole experience of being a director and having it all on you, right? Almost so much that it was scary coming to UMD because, we had an event literally 2 weeks after I got on campus. And I remember at one point, even just trying to carry stuff and my operations staff, in the department being like, oh, no, we got this. You just go sit and focus on the event. And so things like that, right? Where I know what it takes to run an event on my own, right? So if it comes down to that, I definitely can do it. But in that same vein, also, being from a bigger school at Ole Miss and understanding the red tape that comes with being at a bigger school, right? And really understanding how to maneuver that and how to pitch esports. Especially now as a staff member, when an undergrad, I was having to do it as a student, right? So really understanding what it takes to really get the school behind it. So I'm super grateful for both of those experiences, being at a bigger institution and then going to work full-time at a smaller one, because I think they both contributed so much to how I am in terms of my job now.
What's one of your top or favorite experiences so far in being part of the esports ecosystem?
Oh, man. I would say definitely as a student, when I was a student, it was definitely 2019 playing in the Collegiate Call of Duty Grand Final. That was peak competition for me. I've been competing since I was 13 years old in Call of Duty. And I'd say to this day, I don't think there's ever going to be a moment that topped competing that year for me. And then as a worker, honestly, it's hard to say one. For me, I'm big on student impact, and so the success stories I get for students, or the affirmations even that you get from students of you just changed my life, or this or that, offering scholarships or just giving them a sense of home on campus where they otherwise wouldn't have it. Those are the moments for me that make everything worth it. I don't care how stressful my semester is, or what somebody says on Twitter about the program or me, whatever the case may be. As long as my students are happy, I'm happy. And so those stories are typically some of my favorite moments to see throughout the semester.
So I'm going to combine two of the things you just mentioned there, right? So obviously, student impact being important. So understanding, setting a good example, right? And then you also mentioned Twitter. So I'm gonna throw out there that there are a lot of people with a lot of opinions on Twitter.
For sure.
I think one thing that I've seen in the esports education space is that there are plenty of people who are hypercritical of everything that's going on, who have opinions on everything that's going on. What I've appreciated about following your journey, right, is that I think you take a more measured, thoughtful approach to a lot of what goes on out there. So maybe tell us a little bit just about when you're sitting down, right, and you see things going out there on Twitter, right, sort of what goes through your mind. What are the things that you're prioritizing as someone who's a director at a major institution, as you're either responding or just or commenting on sort of current state of affairs?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when I see stuff happen that I might not agree with in collegiate, I also have to put myself aside and realize that even when I look back at some of my practices and programs, and even still today, there's stuff that I don't do 100% correctly, right? And I think that's a common thing that people don't realize is that esports, and particularly collegiate, is still like in such an infancy that none of us have best practices all figured out, for the gist of the entire scene. So when it comes to people, saying, oh, well, this sucks. I'll never attend this again, or I'll never, play in this again. It's like we're not having productive conversations. We're just saying, oh, this is bad. This is why it's bad. Not what do we need to do to fix it? Who do I need to actually talk to fix it, instead of screaming it into the Twitter void, right? And then it gets to a point where, there's entities that don't even want to be in collegiate anymore, because instead of, having educated conversations with them, we're just bashing them on Twitter, and not actually, finding the root, and trying to educate them on what the space needs and what we need from these different entities. So, and not even just that, but even if you're an administrator that's like looking in from the outside and seeing like all this discourse, and seeing how people disagree, it's rarely ever healthy disagreements in collegiate, right? Because like I said, everybody feels like we have everything figured out, or that we know what's best, and that's the bottom line, just because we said so. And so for me, it's typically looking back, when I see something and saying, okay, what can I contribute to this person? A lot of times, a lot of people don't know this. You won't even see me call stuff out in public first. Like I'll DM the person and be like, hey, hey, like, do you have time to talk? Let's chat about this, and like this or that, whether it be about somebody's program, that they're, things that they're doing in the program, events, whatever the case may be, leagues even, and so I wish more people would go out of their way to do that, right? And to talk to these different entities, and help people understand more so where we're coming from, instead of just making collegiate, look like just ferocious sometimes, and just like, bashing people immediately. And so, yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing. It's just like taking a step back and just realizing that none of us have it all figured out. We're all still figuring out what best practices are in this space, and understanding that if we want people to want to join this space and to want to stay in this space, we need to create a healthier environment, not only just for students, but even for, staff as well.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about the things that are going on behind the scenes, right? That also takes a lot more effort, right? Like it's really easy to just kind of like fire a shot across the bow. But when you have tough conversations with folks, right? The things that people are trying to change in not just the collegiate esports space, but esports overall, right? A lot of those things that people are trying to change, they take a lot of time. Right. B, it takes a lot of people working together to solve it. And I think it's really important that we put the work in, right? Because we want to build a better ecosystem, right? And to do that, like you said, there's got to be supports in place. What are some things you think, that maybe exist today in some form or another, or just, what are some things that you think are, I'll say, getting better, right? And that we can continue to take steps to support them.
I think collegiate LAN events are getting a lot better. I think, in quality, and I think in numbers. Obviously, COVID took a big toll on our LAN events, right? They were literally non-existent at that point. But we're starting to see more like third-party TOs like try to put on these events and do it decently well, right? Not saying there's not problems with a lot of these events, right? But we're taking steps to where it's no longer becoming a norm for our players to just compete in their dorms in our facilities, for a full year and never see LAN or never see other teams, in person. So I'm really loving that aspect, and I hope more people get involved, more schools even. I want to see more schools host LANs, right? There's no reason that we can't have more, Hugh Fest every year, especially regionally, right? Because some of these schools on the West Coast literally can't even make it out to Hugh Fest, because they're just too far, So I want to see more schools and even more third-party TOs do LANs and do them correctly, and see more participation in those. I think leagues are getting miles better. I think one thing in particular that was like a big pain point for collegiate a lot of times was like scheduling, right? And so scheduling of, matches, scheduling of, scrims and things like that. But I'm starting to see a lot more like officiating, and a lot more directors taking that upon themselves to like make sure that teams are showing up on time to games and scrims. If you can't show up to a game or scrim, directors reaching out, weeks in advance at this point, letting them know, hey, we have this on our schedule. We need to do this or that to accommodate. And these are all things that, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, like it was non-existent, right? There weren't leagues that were giving us full schedules of our full semester so that I can take it to my marketing department and say, hey, we need these team announcement posters that lay out our whole schedule that we can pass out to high schools to market our program a little bit better, right? So I think just the structure, I guess, all around is just becoming so much better from a competitive standpoint when it comes to these leagues. And like I said, even these LAN events that are starting to pop up. And so I hope that the more, buy-in we get from more of these schools, that the more LAN events we'll start to see across the country.
What kind of things are you excited about being a director at a school that has had a club component, right, or a community around gaming in the past, but this is sort of the first more official efforts. What does this mean for you and for University of Maryland?
For me, I'm happy to be in a position that I wish I would have had when I was in my undergrad, right? I wish I had a director of esports to go to fight for me, with administration and things like that, and to just have my best interests, at heart, and that really understands and knows the space. And so I know how hard it is, like being a student directly and being in a club for so many years and being like, hey, administration, like we need to get on this, we need to do this and that, and not really hearing anything back. So that's one of the things that immediately drew me to UMD was how robust the clubs were, and how many participants they had, and immediately coming in how welcoming they were, and saying like, oh my God, like we're so happy you're here, like we can't wait to work with you and this and that, because we've been trying to get this to happen for years. So to be in a position to where 3 years ago in my undergrad, I wish we had somebody like that, is a really big thing for me. And I think for the school, I think it's just a matter of the sky's the limit for us. We don't know where esports is going to be on this campus in 3 years. And I think that's scary, but it's also very exciting. I can assure you that esports won't be going anywhere on the UMD campus in terms of leaving, but in what capacity it'll be at. In 3 years, we can literally change the landscape in 3 years of what collegiate esports is, especially at the D1 level, just because of how open-minded the recreation and wellness department is to it, but also from an administrative level, even above my pay grade, how many people are involved. The vice president of student affairs reaching out to me directly to chat about esports and wanting to actively learn more and not just have it on campus and just sit it to the side. And so I think that's something that's so exciting. Just the fact that I didn't come into a position where it was, this is what esports is on our campus, this is what it forever will be. I came into, this is what esports is now show us where we need to go in the future. And I think that's something that I'm extremely grateful for it, because I know a lot of people can't, say it about their administration.
All right, last one for you. I can't believe we're almost finished already. But last question I have for you is, as more and more large, high-profile institutions like UMD get involved in the space, what do you think that does for the ecosystem, if you've thought about that at all?
Yeah, I think ultimately it just helps more students find a place at home, right? I think the space a lot of times right now is, if you're a super talented player, you can get a scholarship to go to this school, and that just is what it is. But a lot of times these local state schools don't have the structure to give students a well-rounded experience through their esports program. A lot of times it's still, a lot of D1 schools right now are still clubs. The majority of them are, and that's just how it is. But I think the more schools that get involved, the more opportunity you see for more, underserved communities to get involved, right? There's a lot more diversity and inclusion on these campuses. If you don't believe me, you can look at some of the recruitment classes of these scholarship schools and tell me how much diversity is within those programs, right? And so I think schools like UMD, schools like WVU even, right, jumping into esports and really going headstrong with it. It just really allows us to diversify the space more with students, and just give more opportunities in general. I can say confidently that a lot of the resources, the academic tie-ins, and things like that I've received in UMD just in my 7 months being here, compared to my 2 years at Ottawa at a smaller institution, is like night and day, right? And so the opportunities I've been able to give my students already in forms of student employment, in terms of internships and connections within the DMV, within esports in general, is amazing. And so I think the resources that these D1 schools have will be such a benefit to these students, outside of just the competition aspect. But my students that want to be casters, my students that want to be observers, my students that want to do event coordination, for professional entities when they finish college. I feel like the D1 atmosphere allows for that a lot easier. And so I think that's what we'll start to see as more students more schools start to jump on board with collegiate esports.
Well, Sergio, thank you so much for your time today. Always appreciate our conversations and look forward to
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Doug.
Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever we post new content. Looking forward to seeing you next time.